Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host Nick Filato, and you guys know what day it is. It's a special day. It's one of the most anticipated episodes of the year. It's one of my favorite conversations I have during the year doing this podcast. It's David Syversten of Ourlads. He's going to talk to us about the draft. He's going to talk to us about the Giants. We're going to do a little bit of both, but more draft. I think that's what you guys are here to listen for. So before we do any of that, how you doing today, Cy?
Doing great. Really, just once it hits April, it doesn't always feel like good weather is on the way here in Northeast, especially like a day like today. But the sun's kind of come out. You see the blue sky, and you also know the draft is right around the corner. And this is truly my favorite time of the year because it's what I anticipate from literally last May is this draft class coming up. And it's fun that this time of year just brings a lot of happy joy and pride to myself and the Ourlads staff, because a lot of the fruit of our labor is out on display now with the draft guide out, and can breathe a little bit, but not really until the draft is over.
Sai, can you tell everyone where they can acquire your draft guide?
Yeah. We actually made a lot of extras this year. We have PDF format as well if you're a computer guy. But at ourlads.com, you can go right to the top of the screen that says buy draft guide. And right up there, you can order it in hard copy. You can order it PDF, and you could also order the post-draft review, which we also put out. Usually get it in your mailbox at some point in June. We break down every team. So it's on there, and that's would appreciate any support that you guys show. And I can assure you, and you'll see, even some of the things that I say, we go against the grain in some ways. We truly just kind of follow our views, our opinions as a staff too. We approach it as a staff decision. Everything is it's never individual, and we're not really parroting anyone else. It's what we think. So I think in that way, it's a little unique.
And you guys will hear the depth at which Cy goes into on this podcast, and you'll kind of get your own feel for why that is so valuable. But I want to make sure everyone understands the value of that. I mean, there's a lot of these draft guides out there. I'm not going to name any names or do whatever, but that aren't really doing what Cy just explained. And there are a few that go the opposite route. So I want to shout out those like Emery Hunts. But, people like Cy are going into this with a clean slate and evaluating these players with pure objectivity. And what you're going to get is his evaluation of every prospect. And then what I think is great is when the Giants actually do draft these players, you'll be able to just have some reference where you can look back on, okay, this is what Cy think. This is a breakdown of that player that I don't really know anything about because it's day 3 or whatever it may be when the Giants are taking this player. So definitely something awesome. And then everybody should also check out Ourlads in general. I mean, they have the best depth charts in the world. You get everything you need for every team. So before we get let's transition into some talk here, Si. Let's talk about a lot of things going on. I want to talk a little about the Giants offseason, but I was thinking let's spin it more toward the draft. But I want to first say, as we head into this draft for the Giants, what would you say after their free agency are the biggest needs for this team heading into the draft?
Yeah, long-term answer at quarterback is the glaring need, and I'm sure we'll get into that quarterback talk, prospects, and what they should do. But when you don't have a long-term solution at quarterback, something has to happen. It doesn't have to be in this draft, but that is the biggest hole. So I am in charge of the Giants for the team needs article that is found in the Ourlads draft guide. We quickly break down each position, and quarterback to me is the top need. At that point, the number 2 need on this roster, it can be debated. You could look at the interior defensive line and say, hey, there isn't much next to Dexter Lawrence from a starter perspective. I think they have capable bodies, but they don't have someone that can truly rush the passer and beat one-on-one blocking, which is what you're going to get when you're a teammate of Dexter Lawrence. And you have a couple of formidable weapons on the outside, but they don't have anyone on this roster that can really, truly take advantage of that. I know they made a couple of veteran depth signings, but to me, that's exactly what they are. And you can make those signings any year. And so I would say that is probably the number 2 need. The number 3 need, there is competition for that spot right now, but it would see guard or wide receiver. I am in the minority on this, I know. And we could talk about this. I think the wide receiver is the number 3 need on this roster. If you're going to get the most out of Malik Neighbors, I think there needs to be another true number 2 on this roster. We see with Jamar Chase, a big reason why he is Jamar Chase is because he's had T. Higgins on the other side. And it does open up things. You don't have anyone else in this passing game that takes pressure off of Neighbors. You have a decent number 3 or 4 in Slayton. You have a decent kind of gimmicky slot in Wan'Dale Robinson. But to me, I want a true number 2 opposite of Malik Neighbors to get the most out of him. So those are the 4 needs that I go into the draft saying, hey, you got to get good players at those spots: quarterback, guard, D tackle, and wide receiver.
I like to really hone in on what you just said because that is a more unique perspective, it seems like, around Giants Twitter,
Yep.
but there is a ton of validity to everything you just articulated. So, with that said, in this draft class, who are some of the players that you think can best complement Malik Neighbors and fill that role that you just described with the Giants wide receiver position?
I mean, to me, it's just like they need another Amani Toomer type, a Keen Nix type.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be a 4'3" dude. I would love him to be. It doesn't need to be 6'6". I would love him to be, but you just need someone that is going to go in and get you 4 to 5 catches, 70, 80 yards a game, and score the touchdowns and take advantage of single coverage when he gets it. And I just want someone with a little bit more size, right? I love quoting Daniel Jeremiah where he says, you want your wide receiver room to look like a basketball roster. Right. You want your small, shifty slot receivers. You want your do-it-all. That could be a point guard, a small forward. You want your big guys that can go up and win in contested situations. And that's where I would lean initially. You can go in one of two directions. You can go with the high ceiling raw prospect that is dripping in tools. But to be frank, he doesn't really know how to play the game yet. And he's been in college for, I think, 5 years. And this is Savion Williams from TCU. Yeah. I mean, he is one of the most fun players to watch because of how TCU used him, by the way. Wildcat quarterback, slot, outside, at tight end, 6'4", 225, jumps out of the building, ran a 4.45, was in Quentin Johnston's shadow for a little bit. And the problem with him is he doesn't catch the ball often enough. I think his career drop rate is over 10%, which is too high of a number. It's not a deal breaker. Zay Flowers was there as well, but it is a number that needs to come down. And he just runs into coverage a lot. It sounds funny, and it sounds like it's something you would say when you watch a 7th grader play football, but he doesn't know how to escape contact from defensive backs. And that just comes to me as the skill set. But you know what? Quentin Johnston is having a hard time evolving into an NFL receiver as well. Maybe they just come into the league from that program, not truly developed, just like the Tennessee receivers do, Jaylen Hyatt. So if you want someone a little safer, and we're looking day 2, right? There's a lot more options day 3 where I'm a little bit more excited about the value. But day 2, Alec Ayomoner from Stanford is a kid that he's never going to be a star. He may never be a 1. He could probably be a solid 2. But his floor could be a 3 or 4, kind of like a Darius Slayton caliber player, not his same kind of player. Yeah. But I think that's his basement, is what Darius Slayton is giving the Giants right now. And this is where I see Amani Toomer. And this is a kid that I actually have a little bit of a relationship with him. I've spoken with him, and I get to text him every now and then. This kid puts as much work into route running as any receiver in this draft. He is so fine-tuned with his footwork, his timing, even the positioning of his body and how he tricks defenders into committing in certain directions when he has better leverage. He catches the ball in traffic. He's sneaky effective after the catch. That's the kind of guy that I think would thrive in this role next to Malik Neighbors, and he's probably a day 2 pick.
Wow, I love that call. I've seen a little bit of him, and there are some reps that he has that are just like, wow, maybe he won't be, but it looks like on those reps he has star potential. And I love what you said about the route running precision. It's interesting to me. Maybe they got something good going on in Stanford, because I thought Michael Wilson came out of the draft really good in that regard as well.
Very similar prospects. Yeah, they're very similar. I think Wilson was a little bigger, more physical, but I think this kid has a little bit more ball skills and just natural receiver ability. And I'll tell you what, he's got the highlight of the year from 2023, catching a touchdown over the head of Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
It's something fun to watch. So he's got some star power in him as well.
I love that. While we're on the topic, before we move forward, let's get to some of those day 3 values you like at receiver, because we just talked about some day 2 guys that could go at 34, 65. But if we're going day 3 at receiver, what do you like?
There's a name that had a really interesting college career, Isaiah Nair from Nebraska. And we're talking about a guy that has a combination of size and speed that you won't see every year. And he had multiple injuries early in his career. He transferred to Texas over a 3-year span. He had, I think, 2 targets between injuries and COVID and transfers. And he goes to Nebraska, and with that freshman quarterback they have, Raiola, he ended up really starting to shine once he started actually getting some looks. I mean, this guy's numbers, he is, I just want to express how rare these numbers are. He is 6'4", 218, 34.5-inch arms, 82.5-inch wingspan. For those that don't know those numbers, that is like off the charts big. And He goes out and runs a 4.40, an 11-foot broad jump, 38-inch vertical. For those guys that are into the RAS scores, I mean, that is as good as you're going to find when it comes to straight line explosion with a guy that has size. And you look at some of the balls that he made plays on. I mean, he's got probably 2 of the top 5 catches in this class. If you're going to rank every single high level catch all these receivers made all year, he's got a couple of them himself. So he's a little bit of an older prospect, and he's kind of a one-year wonder. But when you're talking about day 3, that's what you're going for, right? You're going for a low floor, but he can help us out right away. Or you're going for high ceiling. We don't have a ton of production and experience to look back on, but there's something there we can try to develop. That's a name that I think we should all keep an eye on. If you want someone that's a little bit more normal, doesn't have the standout trait, but knows how to play the position, the high floor guy that I just talked about, Shamir DK from Florida. This guy I've been watching. He came from Wisconsin. Dan, you're
a Badger, yes,
right?
Former Badger, held back by bad quarterback play there as well.
I remember watching him there, and some of his route running tactics reminded me of Odell, and he's not as explosive. But Odell had a really unique ability off the line. That was one of the things that made him great early in his career. He was so good at releases and varying it up and getting to his top speed in a hurry. And we saw at Florida, he started being a huge big play threat down there. And even their quarterback play was a little iffy as well. So that's a game that's a name that I think does a lot of little things well that could kind of sneak onto a roster and end up being your number 2 guy within a couple of years.
I love those calls. And he has traits too, by the way, I would say.
Yeah, he does.
I have one wide receiver I wanted to throw at you, different archetype, but somebody I'd turn on his tape. I just really appreciated his overall movement skills and think I haven't heard much about his name, and that's Kyle Williams from Washington. Yeah. So I wanted to just give you the floor to talk about Kyle Williams from Washington State.
So ironically, I think I'm higher on Kyle Williams than most, and I'll tell you what, he was put on the radar last year when Cam Ward was at Washington State.
Yep.
I was scouting Cam Ward last year thinking he was going to come out. So, and almost all of the big plays that Ward was making on 3rd and long or 3rd and gotta have it, it was Kyle Williams. And it wasn't just from the slot, it was from the outside as well. And the tape that I have on him, I was going into it just looking at his size metrics and the majority of his alignments. I was thinking, all right, this is an automatic slot receiver. I think him and Jaylen Noel, very similar prospects, guys that I'm really high on, that I think the market is overlooking. They can play inside and outside. And if you're on a Malik Neighbors offense, I think that is the ideal complement to him.
True.
Because you don't want him only outside. You don't want him only in the slot. Similar to Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, you want to be able to move these guys around. If that's the case, you have to have other players on your roster that can move around. And Kyle Williams, yes, his size says slot, but he's someone that I think can absolutely play outside, really effective after the catch as well. If the Giants are going to turn this thing around, both with a veteran quarterback this year and a rookie that they either draft this year or next, that's a focus I want them to get a hold of, is guys that can make plays after the catch. Out of the backfield at tight end, I question Theo Johnson in that regard. I question even Wan'Dale Robinson in some regards, because he's a very gimmicky player to me.
Yeah.
He's flashed in there. I don't want to say I'm giving up on him. We'll talk about him at some point, but I think that is a weapon that I would like to get into this offense. And I don't care how big or how small he is. You can go in 2 directions with slots that can play outside. It could be Kyle Williams size. It could be Isaac Tesla from Arkansas, Jack Betch from TCU, guys that they're like the Puka Nacua type slots that just have so much size and they get their yards after catch that way. But that to me, guys, Kyle Williams, I'm on team Kyle Williams all day. I have him as my 10th rated receiver in the entire class.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE.
Love that call. Kyle Williams is a personal favorite of mine as well. I think he'd probably be a day 2 guy for the Giants. I don't think he's going to make it out, even with the suspicion that people have that he might be more of a slot only guy. But I love all those calls, and what I love most about them is that in a lot of ways, they're betting on traits. I know you said with DK, he's got a little bit more refinement to his game, but he's also got traits. And I think about when the Giants hit on a day 3 receiver, and it was Darius Slayton, and that was a traits-based pick. At Auburn, He didn't have a lot of production due to the quarterback play and system, and I think that's where you got to go. So definitely a great call. I'm with you on the whole idea that wide receiver is probably a bigger need than even Nick and I have really talked about a lot. It's because we're just so focused right now on the trenches and just getting that right that like we haven't really thought a lot about receiver.
I'll never argue against the trenches unless they're dominant, and they are far from it. So I'll never argue. The question is this, and these are the interesting draft conversations to me, is can you find a way to manipulate the draft board a little bit? Meaning, at wide receiver, I consider it a strong need, but I also can look at my stack from basically number 7 through 24.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty similar. Yes, I have them stacked in that order, but the 12th and 19th guys, they're not that far apart in terms of what they can do for the offense and what you're going to try to get for it. The wide receiver draft classes are turning into running back draft classes, meaning you feel like you can always find them like a round later. And do you want to manipulate the draft board and say, hey, let's go with the lower hanging fruit, all right, the position that has less depth on the offensive line, especially defensive line is pretty deep. And try to attack the deeper part of that class later on. And that's where I want to see the Giants think a little outside the box to instead of just sitting tight all the time and hoping that someone falls to them. We saw the reaction on Hard Knocks last year when Kamari Lassiter got drafted by the Texans. Yeah. And to me, there is some luck, good luck and bad luck involved in every draft class in terms of what other teams are doing. But I'll tell you what, it seems to me every year the same teams are coming out of the draft with, quote, wins, meaning the right value, the right trade ups, the right trade downs, the right acquisition of future picks. That's where I want to challenge the Giants front office to do a little bit better job there.
Just because we're talking about thinking outside the box, there was one name and pivoting to the defense, but we'll jump back and forth.
Yeah.
The Giants sent their linebacker coach to the UCLA Pro Day to watch Carson Schlesinger. Now, if the Giants get Carson Schlesinger, they'd be lucky to get him at 34. What are your opinions of Carson Schlesinger? What are your opinions of the Giants possibly going in that move, since we were just discussing going outside the box? That would be a little bit outside the box.
That would be outside the box. It'd be a surprise, but nobody's predicting that right now. And between Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden, you could say we have solid enough starters. But to me, Micah McFadden, I don't know if he'll ever make it through a full season healthy. It's hard for a linebacker to do that, I know. I've always felt he's a better number 3 than a true number 2, although he did make a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage last year. I just think he's limited in terms of what is expected of an NFL linebacker these days. So I do think linebacker is on the board. And if the Giants are truly going to go into the draft with a best player approach strategy, which I'm always a proponent of when you're not a good football team, and you're not a piece or two away, just keep taking the best players and let that take care of itself. Schlesinger should be in the discussion at 34 overall, even if he's not a starter week 1. Joe Schoen already stated that this team, and I agree with him, is ready to play a game tomorrow. They're not going into the draft trying to find a starter. I'm sure they can, and I'm sure one of these guys can rise up, especially if you're taking a Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. But I'll tell you what, Abdul Carter, he might be the edge 3 on this team if he gets drafted. Travis Hunter, I'm not sure what you're going to do with him in general, but he might not be one of the top 2 corners on the team right away. He will be by the end of the season. So I look at it from the same perspective at linebacker. You can bring in Schlesinger and not be obsessed with, is he the week 1 starter? The dude is a baller. Yeah. He is the long-term answer at linebacker. I am still a fan of linebackers in the NFL. I still think they matter. I just think they're really hard to find. Yep. But when you can find your dude, I think that you have to kind of wrap him up, even if you have to draft him a little bit earlier than you think. And he does fit this scheme. He does fit this situation here in New York at a high level. So I think that is a definite option that nobody is talking about.
I always kind of think with linebacker, the ones that really end up hitting in my mind are the ones with that different level athleticism. You think about Fred Warner,
Yeah.
even a player who's come on a lot in the new regime, Henley, who I loved at it with the Chargers, had a great second year with the new scheme. A lot of athleticism, a lot of speed at that position, and what Nick said, a lot of instincts and a lot of high IQ. This guy has it, so I would be curious and interested in that pick. I think I wouldn't want it at 34 just because I think there's going to be such good trench value there
Yeah.
on maybe O line, but definitely D line. But I'm open to it for sure.
Yeah.
Nick and I have wanted linebacker for a while.
And it's not just that. Just turn on his tape specifically. And
Yeah.
you're going to be like, oh, dude, I love this guy. It's like,
it.
it's one of those, like you watch a drive, you're like, oh, he's my guy. I love him.
Yeah.
He's the prototype. I mean, he's 6'2", 243. His agility drills were off the charts. He's explosive. He's a tackling machine. He does it against the run, against the pass. I mean, I'm partnered with a former college linebacker coach that works for Ourlads, and I mean, I love listening to him talk about Schlesinger, how all these little things that he does right that most college linebackers don't. So to me, he's kind of coming into the NFL with a PhD and playing linebacker, and he's a great athlete, and he's 240 pounds. Some of these linebackers coming out now are 220, 225,
Right.
and seeing running backs just go rampant in the NFL, and I think that's part of the reason why this guy brings it. And this run defense, everyone wants to point to the defensive line. That's part of it. I think the other part of it is there was just a little lackluster linebacker play as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And not only that, it's like I listened to Luke Kuechly break down the game and the level of football IQ he has. It's through the roof. And I think when it comes to that position, yes, I said athleticism is important, but it's that high IQ. And if he's one of those guys, he could change your defense. Because one of the players I loved in a past draft class was Jaylen Petrie. And the reason I loved him is when I watched tape of that defense, I felt like he was the whole defense. I felt like he was making, and I feel like Schlesinger fits that bill as well. So those types of guys are definitely interesting. They're unique prospects. Let's switch it over a little bit. I want to talk a little 30,000-foot view stuff with you before we get into individual quarterback prospects. So we had to talk quarterbacks on this draft. This draft pod. And this question, I want to hear your answer side, but I want to hear yours too, Nick, because we've talked individual prospects, Nick, but we haven't talked this idea. So I want to first touch on this idea. So we head into this draft class with Joe Shane and Brian Dable having never drafted a quarterback in their tenure. And Giants fans cannot handle this concept. They can't understand it. They can't come to terms with it. At the same time, we head into a draft class that going into it, people said, this is a bad quarterback class. Let's be honest about it. And now, as time has gone by, people have convinced themselves on a lot of these players. But man, I look at quarterbacks a little bit differently. I've always talked about this on the pod. I kind of view it as more of a zero-sum game. I don't think that's even the right term for it, but I think it's basically, do you work or do you not work? And I would not be surprised if we get max one long-term starter out of this class, maybe two. I'm not really thrilled about this class. And in that sense, it doesn't make me feel like the Giants have to draft someone just because they haven't in past draft classes. I look at that as sunk cost fallacy. And yeah, that means we haven't drafted someone and you have to keep waiting, but you can get through a season, I think, with Russ and Jameis, and you can get average level play in free agency by signing a Russ. And that might be what some of the ceilings are for some of these prospects. So do you feel like they have to draft a quarterback, or are you more along the lines, and I want your answer as well of this, Nick, of like, we can pass another year on this because why are we wasting assets if we don't really believe in the guy?
Yeah, I mean, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would say let's pass on the quarterbacks this year. So I'm not even thinking it's an option. I think it's what they should do.
Yeah,
and I get a lot of flack for that. I think I put a couple of days ago, I did a PFF mock draft, and I just showed like what it would look like without a quarterback.
Oh, I love that mock. That was a great mock. I love that all.
I mean, sign me up. And it's funny how Giants fans, they're just so split down the middle. Like in those comments, you have people like, sign me up, send it to Shane, blah, blah, blah. Others are like, you suck. You're the worst. No quarterback, right? And I mean, that's our world today, right? You either you agree or you have to blast someone that you don't agree with. But to me, the Giants foundation roster, it's getting better since Shane has been here. I do think it's a better baseline roster than what it was when he arrived, but they're still very far away, and they're still recovering from misses that they had early in their regime in the draft. Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeau is kind of like a borderline miss. Deonte Banks, we don't know yet. You keep missing in the first round, you're just not going to be a winner. And drafting a quarterback simply because you need a quarterback, drafting a quarterback simply because you have not drafted one yet, is exactly what keeps teams in the top 10 year after year. And I know at some point you will have to pull the trigger. And in this same discussion, I wanted to kind of talk about this with you guys. I haven't talked about this yet, but I think you guys are the ones that would have some good feedback and ideas to share is I've always been taught when you scout, it's quarterbacks and then it's everyone else. Like you almost can't even mesh them together on a big board, right? It's just like it's really hard to do that. So now I've always kind of put round grades on. I have my own grading system, but basically I can tell you I have a first round grade on this guy, second round grade on this guy, third round grade on this guy. Okay. I think the grading system with quarterbacks is what makes this a really complicated process in terms of should we draft them at 3 or should we try to trade up for them at 24? Because in my eyes, trading up for them at 24, I get it. You're lessening the value of the contract. You're picking someone else at the top of the draft, but you're also probably giving up other assets to get this player. So to me, it's kind of almost the same. So I think the answer is this, and tell me if I'm wrong, right or wrong, or if you guys agree or disagree. We should get away from grading quarterbacks and just say, hey, I think that guy can start for us and lead us to a Super Bowl. Yes or no?
That's how I've always been. But I think the problem with that, though, Cy, and this is where the detractors come at us, just to be real quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people disagree with us on this. If we're doing that, they say, okay, when are you going to get that guy? Because what are we waiting for? That's not going to come every class. And they are right about that.
Yes, absolutely. They just want a shiny toy to hope for. And this is why fans can't do the drafting. Fans want something to keep that helps them sleep better at night in May, in June, in July, in August. Hey, and even after his rookie year, hey, at least we have a young guy. Right. And maybe I'm hoping the coaching staff and front office is not thinking like that too. Like, hey, job security, we get a young quarterback in here. If they believe in Shedeur Sanders, go for it. I can see why, and we'll talk about him in detail, but I can see why someone would believe in him. We're not talking about drafting Dylan Gabriel at 3 overall. Like I could see the starter in him.
Yeah.
But and you have to put a numerical objective measurement in your head. Do you really think you're going to win because of this guy? He's going to make other players better. That's the next level of that question. And if the answer is still yes, if you think Malik Neighbors is going to become an all-pro because of Shedeur Sanders, if you think Theo Johnson is going to turn into a mini Gronk because of Shedeur Sanders, you take him no matter what. But if the answer is like, I don't know, like I don't really see that, then you don't take him in the first round. You only take him on day 2. That's where I'm starting to lean towards with quarterbacks. Is I think I'm trying too hard to put these fine grades on them, where at the end of the day, it's, do I trust him to bring the Lombardi trophy back to New York? Yes or no? Do I think he could be Eli Manning? Yes or no? 500 quarterback, but he won 2 Super Bowls, had his ups and downs, was not a special quarterback, was not uber talented, but he was a winner. He made other players better. If you feel that way about a quarterback, you take him as high as you want to take him. Period. And I think that's what the Falcons did with Michael Penix. Yep. I think that's what the Broncos did with Sean Payton.
Yeah, you're right about that, Nick.
Yeah, no, spot on analysis right there, Cy. And I tend to be in the same exact boat. And there's a lot that we're not going to know about the quarterback position because we're not on the blackboard with these guys.
Exactly.
And you can discern so much information from just talking with the quarterback. Yes. But what we're just talking about, everybody minus Cam Ward right now, is there anything physically about Shedeur Sanders that makes you be like, yes, I can see that he's going to rise the level of everybody around him? I think if Shedeur Sanders is going to reach his maximum ability, like his potentiality is going to be 100%. It's all going to be from within the pocket and his mind through timing and through anticipation. And I haven't necessarily seen that consistently displayed on his Colorado team. Yeah. So when you're talking about 3 overall and you're going to write off Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, that's a tough sell for me personally. That's a very tough sell. If you're talking about trading up and you're going to just get rid of essentially the all these like day 2 picks, probably maybe even next year's day 2 picks, that's also a tough sell. I don't like doing the whole comparison game. Not a big comparison game thing, but people enjoy it. And I look at Shedeur Sanders, and I could see Shedeur Sanders having and this is not disrespectful in my opinion, because I think this was a good quarterback in his time, but like an Andy Dalton type of career. And that I still think is like a high-end comp for him even, right? Like, and I don't think that's a disrespectful thing, but people look at Andy Dalton now, it's like, dude, the guy's like 40 freaking years old, but he was a solid quarterback for a while.
He was.
But like, to me, 3 overall, we're talking about it. It's just, with everything else considered, I'm not necessarily overly enthusiastic about the Giants going in that direction based off the film that I've seen.
And just to tie it back together real quick, that's because of what all three of us have already said on this. We're just not everybody can look for what they want. We're not personally looking for a solid starter for a bunch of years at 3. We're looking for that Super Bowl difference maker, because I think the reason being is, like, I'm not saying he's definitely going to be solid this year, but I think Russell Wilson has a really good chance to be solid this year if he starts all 17 games. So you could just find that in free agency and giving up no assets. So why am I giving up the 3rd overall pick to get that?
Yeah, and I think both of you guys have touched on this, and this is probably the most under-talked about component of drafting Shedeur Sanders. You are also passing on a potential special player at a premium position. One of them plays 2 premium positions.
Yeah.
I mean, that when you're watching Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston play quarterback, and you're 4-8 in the middle of November, and you don't have a pass rush, or you don't have another weapon after Malik Neighbors twists his ankle, and you're watching Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter on red zone go off, are you actually going to be that happy that you might have a quarterback that might be okay in 2-3 years from now? And to me, I don't want to. I do look into next year's draft class a little bit, but that's not the only thing. I do foresee better quarterback talent in next year's class. That's a risk in and of itself. That's not what's going to sway me towards drafting or not drafting Shedeur Sanders, but there is an advanced scouting component to this. And this is why I'm a huge fan of even looking into the possibility of trading down. If you're sitting there at 3 and somebody wants to take the leftover of Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, I would only do it if I was getting a future one, by the way, because to me, the Giants are going to be in a really good position at this time next year. If they had 2 number 1s, they pick up another extra pick as well from whoever wants to trade up, and they could still get one of these solid players. And the plan B is still, okay, just draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and you're in a great spot. And that does not cross off quarterback on day 2, but it does ensure, or I would say enhance the odds that you're going to bring in a really good football player at number 3 overall that will be part of the solution to turning this thing around.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. I'm open to that idea side, but I'm not as in on it because I just lived it before with the trade down, with not getting Micah Parsons insulated. And I also just kind of feel like unless I can have a really strong feeling that the team I'm trading with is going to be bad next year,
that's true.
I don't like, because if they land with like 15th or 16th, it's not going to be enough to trade up. Like the teams who want a quarterback are just taking it. We've also lived that, right? Like we wanted Cam Ward, we have no chance at him. We wanted May, or we wanted Jaylen, we have no chance at them either. So it's just, you kind of have to have that picks. But I will say this, if you draft Shedeur this year and we don't really fully believe in him, you kind of take yourself out of the market for quarterback next year, which I also don't personally love.
And we've seen that already with Daniel Jones being out of the quarterback market because of him.
And we couldn't get Justin Herbert, even though we love Justin Herbert. Dave Gettleman loved him, but he didn't even consider him in that draft class. So I think a lot of factors in play. But before we move on, I do want to talk other quarterback prospects with you. I want to get to a player that Nick and I haven't discussed a lot, though we've watched his tape. And it's a really tough evaluation for me. This is a player that some Giants fans want to trade back into round 1 to draft. Other Giants fans are saying, I don't know if I want to do that, but if he's there at 34, I want to draft him. I am honestly in the camp of neither of those two. I don't want to trade up and give assets or take him at 34, mostly because I just can't figure him out. And it's Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback. Now, I like his traits to some extent, but when I watch that offense, what I see is a lot of Lane Kiffin scheming up stuff. And then I also see a lot of issues with when that first read isn't there for him. And when he kind of doesn't, when he confirms something pre-snap, it's not there post-snap, his head goes down and he looks to run. These are some of the same issues I saw with Daniel Jones at Duke. And that's what scares me. Now, I'm not saying he can't be a great quarterback. He has traits. Some traits I think are better than Jones, but it's just such a projection for me that I don't know if I want to gamble the 34th pick or trading back into round 1. Where are you at with Dart?
Dart is kind of exactly where like Will Levis was a couple of years ago. He's exactly where Michael Penix, without the injuries, was last year. I think I had him around the Bo Nix grade, if not a little less. And to me, I mean, a 41-game starter in college runs away from USC because of competition and goes to Ole Miss. Him and Lane Kiffin hit it off. Lane Kiffin, the same head coach who has never put a quality quarterback into the NFL ever.
Wow.
And he starts setting records. And if you watch his tape, and just like many of these guys, he's not the only one. Half of his completions are under 3 yards. Like in my filter that I have for my film, I said, all right, here are his stats. here are his stats when he throws the ball 5 yards down the field, and it's like everything's cut in half.
Wow.
I mean, over half his production is like that one read, short throw, no skill, just get the ball to the guy and let him go. With that said, and this is why he is a tough eval, when he does have to throw the ball downfield, when he did have to deal with pass rush, I thought he was one of the best. Yep. I thought he was I actually think he's better under pressure. When I say pressure, I'm talking about pass rush than Shedeur and Cam Ward. He's thicker. He's strong. He's a sturdy 220. He's a really thick build. I think he weighs 220, but he's got a very condensed frame. Just meaning he's a rock solid dude. He's going to be a hard guy to get to the ground. Plays through pain. I mean, he hurt his ankle, I think, on the first play at Georgia. And it was a pretty nasty injury. He's limping around the entire field, and he has a lot of gamer in him. You see that when guys are bearing down on him as a pass rusher, and he'll stare down the barrel of a gun just to give himself another second to throw the ball downfield. So that's why there are flashes that get you excited. But if you watch all the film, or at least most of the film, you're also going to see repeated mistakes where it truly looks like he does not know what's going on in the secondary. I mean, he's thrown into triple coverage with one asset down the field more than a handful of times. And it wasn't 3rd and 12. It was like 1st or 2nd down in a tie game in the second quarter on the road. LSU is the game I'm watching, talking about. How we ended the Florida game. All the picks at the end of the game. And like, that is the game. Whenever I talk well about him, everyone's like, did you see the Florida game? I'm like, yes, guys, I saw the Florida game 8 times. Like, those are but he also, what's funny about the Florida game was leading up to the fourth quarter was probably his best tape of the year.
Yeah. He was swinging it.
And high level throws. And you guys, like, Dan, I know you're a big anticipation guy. There were a few throws that he made in anticipation, layers over the defense, hit a guy in stride. 2 of his receivers dropped really high level throws in that game as well. So that's what makes him tough. My line on him, I've used a few times, sorry to be repetitive, but if you took the 30 best throws of every quarterback in this class, I think he's got half of them.
Wow.
But if you took the 15 worst throws, I think he's got half those too. And and some of these mistakes are mental. And he started 41 games. This isn't Anthony Richardson starting 13 games. He just doesn't know what he's doing yet. This guy knows, or is probably near his peak of understanding the game. So, and that won't fly in the NFL. You can't. And then I dive into, I literally watch these guys' press conferences after losses. I've watched all of them, Cam, Shedeur, and I wouldn't say this affected my grade, but it kind of feeds into the notion that I don't know how mature this kid is. That his post-game interviews are just like he's got a hoodie over, he's barely looking up, he's not answering questions. I'm like, the New York is going to eat. New York market will eat that up and spit it out. If there's one quarterback in this class that I think can handle New York media, it's Shedeur.
Yep, I agree.
I'm not in on Dart in round 1. I don't think I'm even in on him in round 2 because there's going to be players above him that I just would rather have on this roster to build the nucleus. If we're talking round 3, I would get in on that discussion.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. Nick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, one quarterback. Well, there's no thoughts on that. You basically just spoke what Dan and I have talked about a lot, other than I wasn't really aware of the post-game press conference stuff, but you're right, man. Yeah, I can imagine Pat Leonard asking questions.
I am curious though, Nick, because that is true. I am curious though, Nick, because I haven't really heard much of your thoughts on Dart. Are you along the same lines of Cy of not at 30, or me, I guess? And
no, I've never 34 to me. Look, I'm not somebody who's like, hey, I want this position at 34. Right. I just know how this draft is. It's very interior defensive line heavy, and some of those interior defensive linemen could fall. So I'm looking in that direction. There's some edge rushers too, interior offensive linemen as well. Wide receivers, even if there's somebody in Carson Schlesinger, we brought up a little bit before. I'm not sold that I want a quarterback at 34, right? So I'm not necessarily in that camp, but I did want to ask Cy about one other quarterback that Dan and I have talked about, and you talked about last year when you came on the podcast, and that is Jaylen Milroe from Alabama. What are your overall opinions after the 2024 season that we just witnessed? And would you endorse the Giants selecting him, let's say, at 65?
Or 34. Let's throw
or 34. Let's make it interesting.
Yeah. Oh man, this is a tough call. 34. I'm going to say no. But I'll be lying if I said I wouldn't be excited.
It's intriguing.
What's the line that like a lot of people like to use? They throw their remote at the TV. Like I wouldn't do that if they draft him at 34. I think the value, I would just feel better. I'd sleep better at night knowing that he's going to go in the 3rd round. But did you guys see that he got invited to the draft?
Yeah.
I think
very interesting.
I mean, when I listen to guys, I don't listen to a lot of draft analysts. Daniel Jeremiah is the one I will listen to a lot, and Joel Klatt. And Jeremiah, he's just been hinting to me that there's someone in the NFL that could be drafting him in the first round. So it's a pipe dream to say that he's going to be in the third round. I just would feel better. So let's keep it on the second round. Let's say they go in another direction, the Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter at 3, and you get Jaylen Milroe at 34. What makes me excited about this kid is that his electric trait, the athleticism, is on par with the best we've seen. Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. He is in that discussion. He's not a good athlete. He is a great athlete. He's one of the best athletes in the NFL the second he comes in, and he's 220.
Agree.
Breaks tackles. So your worst case scenario is it doesn't work out at quarterback. There's still going to be a lot of usage for him. And I think that's what makes you feel safe about drafting him. This isn't going to be a Malik Willis. Hey, we don't think he could play quarterback, and he could be a solid backup for us and make some things happen. No, hey, he didn't work out, but we're going to use him in a Taysom Hill on steroids type role and add to our running game and give us another weapon. And hey, look, he can throw the ball. It kind of widens the scope. He's the kind of quarterback that defensive coordinators hate to game plan against. That means something. On the flip side, as a passer, he went backwards in 2024, and I gave him a lot of he was my number one guy for a few weeks after the Georgia game, LSU. I was really impressed. I was like, all right, he's getting to. Before the season, I said he's a 4 out of 10 passer. If he can get to 7 or 8 out of 10, the dude's could be a number one pick. He never got there. He kind of stayed at 4, and part of the reason is, and I watched all the behind the 22 tape from behind. He locks in on his target immediately post snap almost all the time, and he will follow the dude across the field. There's no thought of backside defenders. And I saw this live at the Senior Bowl. He threw a few backside interceptions because the guys are like, oh, there he is. He's got his target. He's running a dig. I'm just going to start running towards the middle of the field. Ball's going to be in my hand.
Wow.
Also missed a lot of layups and free throws. Guys that he was missing a lot of easy throws. The last thing I don't like about him is the footwork does not play to how athletic he is as a passer. It's almost like he's trying to learn how to play quarterback right now. Just simply handing the ball off. It's just like pop, pop, pop. Very, very segmented, very lethargic. And this is why it's a very polarizing topic, because what better situation than this right here to bring him in? Because he's not seeing the field this year.
Right. Well, you actually hope he does in some kind of
as a running back, as a wildcat, right? And then it's almost like that could be what Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen say, hey, we're going to get a look at developing this guy for a year and putting him on the field next year. Our basement is now higher with Russell Wilson. He's going to give the Giants the best quarterback play they've had in years. Jameis Winston, not a terrible backup if Russell ever goes down. And then we'll find some packages for Jaylen to help us out here and there. It makes sense on paper when you talk about it that way.
It's funny because this brings me back to a point you made earlier in the podcast, Si, about how this is the definition of a pick where if you make it, Giants fans can sleep happy in May. Look at the upside we have. It's so exciting.
Yep.
But when you really barrel it down, is it worth 34 when this guy really is still learning how to play quarterback, like you said, when it comes to his post-snap vision, the layup throws that he misses? He's an explosive talent. The way I look at it, man, he has a defining trait. I think you're right. He'd be one of the best athletes in the NFL with one of the best frames for a quarterback, which a lot of these guys don't have, to be completely honest. Don't love Sanders' frame. Don't love Ward's frame, just to be, give a few.
Absolutely. The feather in his cap too, that doesn't get enough publicity. He throws the ball deep really well.
Yes. That was what got me.
It's almost like, why can't you translate that to intermediate?
I know. He's better deep than intermediate. It's wild.
There was not, of all the grading I have, there was not a single quarterback that suffered from more deep drops than Jaylen Milroe. I mean, even his Ryan Williams, his stud receiver, he dropped a couple downfield that were dimes, 50, 60-yard dimes that he couldn't even step into. And this is what arm strength is. I don't care about it as much as some do. And everyone's like, oh, did you see that Shadur Sanders 55-yard throw at his pro day? I'm like, bro, he did a crow hop and he barely got it.
I know.
I know some of my friends can do that, right? That's not impressive.
And it don't.
What's impressive to me is that he can't step into a throw and he could still put it 55 yards down the field on a dime. And he did that multiple times. So that is what Jaylen Milroe is to me. There is an upside there to me. And of all these quarterbacks, he has the highest ceiling because he is leaps and bounds above everyone when it comes to the dual threat approach. And he's not that far behind the arm talent perspective.
Agreed.
So, no, I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, I would not lose sleep over Milroe at 34. And I think that's where you're going to have to take him if you're the Giants.
And it seems like we all have the same idea for what we want in a quarterback. We want traits, we want upside, because we understand, like, I think somebody talked about this on Twitter the other day, and we'll get off quarterback and 30,000 foot view stuff in a second, but it's an interesting concept. I thought it was really smart. He said, I think everyone, the media, the fans have it all backwards when they consider a quarterback pro ready. They look to the players like Shador as pro ready. I think it's the opposite. I think the pro ready ones are the guys with traits, because those are the ones who can actually make plays right away. The guys who look like they're pro ready at college, then they get to the NFL level, the offense is completely different. The hash marks, everything changes, and your talent has to show out your traits. And that's what, I'm looking for, honestly.
Can they adjust the scheme to fit Jaylen Milroe's strengths? I think that's the question. If you're John Mara, that's what you're asking. What are you going to do what the Ravens did for Lamar and basically build the offense around his skill set and then evolve it in time?
Right.
Greg Roman was perfect at that, but he was not the long-term solution at offensive coordinator. So that's the same church, different pew with Travis Hunter. If you're going to draft him, he's generational, and I don't use that word, guys. Wow. He is generational, but what's your plan? I need to see, like, what are you doing with them? Are you offense or you defense? Or what looks do you put them in on both sides of the ball? Same thing with Jaylen Milroe. What is the plan for A, his development, and B, the situation around him? Are you going to start drafting extra tight ends? Are you going to start drafting 335-pound offensive linemen to get moving off the ball? Like, let me know what that plan is. And if I'm not convinced, then I don't do it.
Yeah, I think obviously with the layup throws, it's just interesting because we've seen Dable run an offense around a quarterback like this in 2022 with Jones. Yeah. So I think the best fit for him is actually with Chicago, because I just think the way that I've seen Ben Johnson do some creative things on offense, I can imagine him just coming around, taking a pitch, and he's the option to run or throw, and they're just like total misdirection and that stuff like that. But let's move back. Yeah,
Chicago took Jaylen Milroe in the second round, man. I just would love to see everyone be like, "Oh, Caleb's getting benched, guy."
That would be the other side of it. It would be a nightmare from that standpoint. But let's move a little forward outside of quarterbacks, unless there are. Maybe we'll get back to if there's a day 3 guy that interests you later. But I want to talk about this 3rd overall pick, and I want to put a scenario out there that we don't think is going to happen, but you never know. It's a draft. Yeah. Say it's Ward 1, Sanders 2. You're on the board. You're the Giants. You're not trading back. There's no offer of a 2026 one that you like. Who do you, Cy, prefer? Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter? Is it somebody we haven't talked about?
No, it's definitely one of those two guys. They're the only two guys that have like anything close to an all-pro projection on, and you can't pass on guys that you project being all-pro unless you're just getting a stupid offer from someone that's like, multiple future first and all that. I've been back and forth on this a lot, and I got asked yesterday, like, what, like, it sounds like you wanted Hunter 2 weeks ago, and now you want Carter. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know yet. Like that. But if the draft was right now and you're on the clock, I think I would go Travis Hunter, because even though I am trenched biased, and I do see Micah Parsons comparisons to Abdul Carter, the only reason I think Travis Hunter is someone that I would take over Abdul Carter, and this could change between now and the draft, is simply because he's generational. He really can play just receiver and be an all-pro. He can be just a corner and be all-pro. I'm biased towards him playing receiver still, even watching him at his pro day, watching him catch the ball, watching him run routes, knowing who he is as a person too. He's got the best intangibles you're ever going to find, which is really rare. He's got no diva in him. You know what you're getting. And to me, it gives the Giants, I've talked about this a few times, it gives the Giants an identity on offense that, yes, is still missing the quarterback long term. But if you do find the quarterback and you have Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter, I mean, you're this close to being a superstar offense. And it's not neither receiver is dependent on the downfield passing game, which can be dangerous in the Northeast in the winter, right? Like you don't want to be the Miami Dolphins, right? Where you need these huge plays down the field to succeed, because it's really hard to make them at the end of the season when it counts. So Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors, to me, they're as dangerous as you can find after the catch. And I know some of the numbers analytics don't lead you to believe that with Hunter, but that was more because they just threw so many screen passes to him in terms of yard after catch numbers. But you talk about quick speed, vision, decision-making, fluidity. I mean, he's a better athlete than Malik Neighbors. I think he's more dangerous than Malik Neighbors after the catch. So if you could find a way to get that quarterback in there and you had those two weapons on a rookie contract for the next 3 years, I mean, you can go crazy building the rest of your roster, offensive line and defensive linemen. And the one thought, the one thing that keeps me back on Abdul Carter a little bit, and it's not enough to cross him off in this discussion, but there are some character concerns with him in terms of how hard he works, who he thinks he is, and then the foot issue. The foot issue is not going to be something that we're going to see impact next year. He's going to be healthy by training camp. That's signed, sealed, delivered. But the way he plays and how much he depends on burst and bend, that ankle flexion, you put a plate in there, you're going to have every doctor say it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. You cut anyone open, you put some hardware in there, It matters. So I think that I feel more secure that Travis Hunter is going to be a superstar than I do Abdul Carter. And that's kind of where that discussion is going towards.
Just one quick note on that. I love the point you made because Nick and I haven't discussed this a lot about his character, Travis Hunter. I think there's somehow no diva in him, despite being someone who you would think would be the number one diva. And I think I read yesterday that he was all academics at Colorado, like 3.
It never happens.
GPA. Like this is just a rare prospect.
Yep. It never happens. Academic All-American and All-American. It's happened 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that this is as close to a can't miss player. And that we didn't even mention in this entire discussion, his ability to play cornerback and that being at least an option if Deonte Banks does not work out for the Giants. So for me, I look at it and I'm fully on the Travis Hunter train. Although the thought of having a healthy Abdul Carter with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, like we salivated about it on yesterday's podcast.
You can't go wrong with either. And I think that's the number one thing that whether side of the argument you're on, there's no wrong answer. And I'd be ecstatic with either.
It's a good place to be.
Yes, it's a good place to be. Number 3 overall in the draft.
Very, very rare for Giant fans to say over the last decade or so.
Yeah. So how are they going to F it up? Are they going to draft Mason Graham?
Well, funny you say that because Nick and I are not as high on Graham as consensus either. Where are you at on him?
I think he's one of the top 15 players in the draft.
Yeah.
I think he's fun. He's safe. He's high floor. But do you guys remember the defensive tackle Kyle Williams from LSU? He was with Buffalo, short arm with NFL. Everyone loved him. I see some of that in Mason Graham in that he's going to be a safe, reliable player. But I don't know if he's going to be a good enough weapon against the pass to really make him a top 5 option, right? A top 10 option because he's so good at lateral movement and he's great with his hands. Yet he was never really that productive as a pass rusher. And we saw this with Michigan already and Mazai Smith going to Dallas. Different prospects, different players. But there are traits in him that I think will show up, negative traits in his game that will show up in the NFL that did not show up in college. Lack of length, lack of ability to disengage, lack of variety in pass rush moves. He is a weapon against the run, and he'll be a fun, safe player. He'd be a great compliment to Dexter Lawrence, but he's not big. He's average athlete. He just knows how to play the game. And that, to me, is what makes you a sustainable NFL career, but it doesn't make you a superstar. And if you're drafting top 5, top 10, you're looking for a superstar.
To circle back to the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned interior defensive line. It's something Dan and I talk about a lot. It's a position that we want to target at 34 just because we know this draft is rich and there could be really high-end players there available at 34. So can you just explain to our audience or tell our audience some of your favorite players at the interior defensive line position and what archetype of interior defensive lineman do you think the Giants best need to fully round out this defense with Dexter Lawrence right there?
Great question in terms of what kind of defensive tackle, because what is Dexter Lawrence now and what will he be in 2 to 3 years? I don't want to say he's slowing down, but we know that the back nine is going to start soon, and he's going to be a great player for a few more years at least. So I don't want to go down that path, but can you find a player that would complement him both now and down the road? And I lean towards, I'm a big pass rush guy, and I think you can manufacture run defense with better players and better not better personnel, but better strategy and better game planning. Is Shane Bowen that guy? We'll see. Does a linebacker help that situation? I'd rather go after the pass rusher or at least someone that promotes pass rush upside. I don't want to give up too much on size, though. I'm a big football is a big man's game. I want big, fast, physical, hungry, angry dudes that play up front. And to me, Derek Harmon from Oregon was kind of a non-factor at Michigan State. All of a sudden shows up, gets real coaching at Oregon. They're stacked in the defensive line room and their coaching staff. And you saw it in him right away. He was one of the most productive, dominant run defense pass rushers in the entire nation after being under those guys for just 1 year. So Derek Harmon's a guy that if he's there at the top of round 2, he's on a very short list of guys that I would want. Tyleik Williams is an interesting name to me because we all put this run defender label on him. 6'1", 325, 330. I think he looks 350 in season, if I'm being honest with you. Doesn't have long arms, but the dude does not lose. He does not get pushed around, and he does, like Dexter Lawrence, show some bull rush capability as a pass rusher. And I think that there's some untapped upside with him to be a good enough pass rusher to really balance him out. Walter Nolan, there's going to be character red flags with him, but he probably does have the best first step. But again, you lose some size on him. I wouldn't say he's ineffective against the run, but he's not going to be a weapon against the run game, and he could turn into a liability because of how fast he tries to play upfield. 2 more names, Kenneth Grant from Michigan. He's the teammate of Mason Graham. Very similar situation to 2019, Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins coming out of Clemson. Christian Wilkins is like the fast, athletic, productive. Let's draft him in the top 10. Dexter Lawrence is like the kind of his sidekick. Now it's been a complete role reversal in the NFL. Dexter Lawrence has turned into a dump because of traits. And Kenneth Grant is big, thick, long, heavy-handed. He just doesn't play with consistency yet. So that's kind of like the gamble on an athletic trait. I would love to get a guy in here like him to play under Dexter Lawrence and try to mold his game after him. And the last one to me is one of the most interesting prospects. He's a little older, comes from a smaller program. It's Darius Alexander from Toledo. Yeah. Really well put together, freaky athlete, performed very well at the Senior Bowl when he got put up against some higher level competition, similar to teammate Kenyon Mitchell did last year, ended up being your first round corner. But again, on the older side, that does matter for linemen more than some other positions because they don't have that much more physical development to take on, but he lines up everywhere. And to me, when I look at the Giants defensive line, I like Dexter Lawrence being able to kind of mold into different roles, but like Malik Neighbors, you need to have other guys that can do that as well to keep these guys on the field. And I know you can come up with rotations. They sign some depth pieces, but Darius Alexander, to me, you could put Joshua Farmer in this discussion as well. Guys that you can move them around and you can let their size, athleticism kind of create mismatches across the line based on who you're playing, what the situation is.
I love it. And I want to, before we transition off this, I want to talk a little bit about potential interior defensive linemen they can get at 65 or honestly even 99 and 105. The reason being, the more I've looked into this class, yes, there's probably going to be an IDL at 34 that I'm just like, all right, he's the best value of best player and we need him. But it's kind of also, this class has so much depth at D-line that a part of me is like, if there's a good offensive lineman here at 34, I kind of want to go that direction instead because I know I can get D-line later and I don't feel as comfortable about the O-line depth of this class. So as far as possible options, either at 65 or even 99 and 105 at D-line, who are some of the guys there that might pique your interest?
Derek Harmon's teammate, Jamari Caldwell, was a little bit of an afterthought for me during the season. I didn't love the way his body looked, kind of looked a little sloppy. And then during the Michigan game is when I started noticing this guy is making plays sideline to sideline. And he's a much better athlete than you would look. And that's why you can't stereotype when you look at guys. You can give him an initial look, but people were all excited about Deion Walker. And I'm like, well, if you really watch the tape, it doesn't really turn into anything that gets you excited. But Jamari Caldwell, and he showed this at the Senior Bowl as well, just winning one-on-ones left and right. Incredibly fast hands. He plays low to the ground. He's 332 pounds as well. So when he plays with that kind of twitch and that kind of handwork and that just ability to know how to disengage from blockers at that size, that demands a lot of attention in the trenches. And to me, if you can get a guy that demands attention in round 3, round 4, he doesn't have to get you 10 sacks, but he's going to make you 2 guys go his way because he's breaking through initial contact. He's a massive body that you can't move with one guy. That's going to free a lot of different things up for that front. So Jamari Caldwell is a guy that I like a lot. Warren Brinson from Georgia is a guy that never jumped off the screen when it came to production, making big plays, but very heavy-handed, very technique savvy. He plays all over the Georgia defensive line, and the Georgia defensive coaches said that their defense would have been half as good without him on the field. He's one of the glue guys to that defense. And if you're looking round 4, one of my favorite round 4 picks the Giants have ever made was Barry Cofield at a defensive tackle from out of Northwestern. He started week 1 of his rookie year, and he was a part of those, like really, like as the team evolved under Eli Manning and Tom Coughlin, you had a lot of glue guys on the offensive and defensive line. They were not superstars. They were not all pros, but they brought everything together. They kept everything attached. And that is what I think Warren Brinson will be at the next level. He might even be there around 5.
Love that. Love those deep calls.
Transitioning to edge real quick, Cy. 34, 65, same exact time frame that Dan and I have been talking about, these mid rounds. Who are some of the players that you think would best fit and complement the New York Giants personnel and scheme? One player, I don't think he'd be there, but I just wanted to start this conversation off with Donovan Ezraku from Boston College. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, a little undersized, but he's freakishly long for his frame. I mean, and that's what I like. I go after length more than weight, especially when these kids are coming out of college. You guys can put some weight on. So he's got 34.5-inch arms, that kid. And when his pass rush wins are NFL caliber pass rush wins, just it looks right? When it comes to bend, the timing, the hand placement, the ability to alter his pass rush moves, he's very far along the curve in terms of, hey, how do I get to the passer if plan A is not there? And that's a problem with a lot of college pass rushers because they're so used to winning on plan A that they don't have a good plan B. He's got plan B, plan C in the holster ready to go at all times. So he'd be a really good value pick. It does add another body that's a little on the undersized side. But again, it's okay. You don't want to chase traits too much at a position, especially the position that is tasked with, hey, get to the passer. That's the job. You can come in all shapes and sizes, get to the passer. So that's a name that I like there. If you do want someone with a little bit more size, has just as much juice as any of these top guys, but doesn't always have that plan B, it's Princely Umanmielen from Mississippi. Started off at Florida. He's been an unreal productive edge rusher that just does not get enough attention. His first step and his length are two weapons that he knows how to use. He's beat a lot of quality pass rushers with that combination. I always am biased towards tape against guys when they're matched up against future NFL tackles. Like I love to watch Armand Membu versus Jahad Campbell. Like I don't want to watch Armand Membu against the Indiana pass rusher that won't be in the NFL next year, right? And his tape shined against his best competition. He's a day 2 threat. Maybe more of a round 3 guy if you want to. I mean, too bad the Giants don't have 4 different 34 picks overall, right? Because we keep them coming back. They're going to have to pick one of these spots, and there's going to be an unhappy crew at somewhere. A name that I do think I like more than others. He's still, to this day, a little bit more of an upside type guy, but it's JT Tuimalu from Ohio State. He's one of these guys. I like him over Jack Sawyer, his teammate from Ohio State. He's a guy that was a 5-star recruit, one of the best recruits Ohio State ever nabbed. I don't want to say that means a lot at this point as they're entering the NFL, but he's been such a steady presence for that defense and that locker room and he's made some of his biggest games played in were his best games. And he's a guy that kind of rose to the occasion throughout his entire career, whether it's interceptions, sacks, pressures, tackles for loss. He fits into a lot of different edge type roles. If the Giants want to get a little bit more bigger, a little bit more physical on the outside to balance what they currently have, he's a name that I would look at as early as round 2. But I think that the elephant in the room, I can give you guys an inside look at the Ourlads 7-round mock draft. We actually go through a 7-round mock draft. 3 of us. It takes us 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it's in our draft guide. And in the 2nd round, I gave them one of the bigger character concerns of the class, but it's not in trouble with the law. It's not in trouble with laziness. He just kind of does things his own way. And it's James Pierce from Tennessee. This guy has had so much pressure production, and his first step combined with his size is better than it's probably even better than Abdul Carter when you're going to throw in some of the length and size into there. But there are just some questions with whether or not he's truly coachable. And I'll tell you what, that Tennessee coaching staff, they don't necessarily prepare their guys to the next level. I mean, what players have come out of Tennessee in the recent years that you're like, oh, he's had a good career?
Right.
And I wonder if it's a coaching staff problem there as much as it is a player problem, because James Pierce has the upside of Abdul Carter. I'll say that. And if you can get him in the second round, that would be a worthy gamble, in my opinion. But I'm not the one writing those paychecks, because if he doesn't apply himself and try to get stronger and try to be more coachable, then he's just going to be, at best, your third down wide 9 edge rusher that's just going to hopefully beat the tackle to the edge and bend the corner.
Real quick on
Yep.
one other Tennessee defender, just because we're talking about the Volunteers, Omar Norman Lott, interior defensive lineman, played like 20 snaps a game because, again, Tennessee, they're a little funky with how they distribute snaps. But what are your opinions on him?
Liked him a lot. I mean, my first look at him live, because I didn't watch a lot of tape on him during the year, was at the Senior Bowl. And I was like, who is this guy? Because everyone's talking about Walter Nolan. And I'm like, I like this kid more right now because he's a little heavier. He got heavier contact, and he has a little bit more juice in pursuit. Walter Nolan's like that first step burst guy. And if he doesn't win on the first step, it's kind of over for him. This kid plays through the whistle, and he's just got heavier, more dense contact to him. He doesn't have a lot of rush moves, and he is a little on the short arm side, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it shows up when guys really get the initial advantage on him. When they lock him up, he has a hard time disengaging. But he does have some of that Grady Jarrett, built low to the ground, can turn a tight corner. If you give him a window, he's going to take it, and he can close pretty fast in that regard. And I like that he plays like he's on fire. He's a very hyperactive dude that will play through the whistle. On the Giants, I'll be honest with you, he's similar to Nunez Roches in terms of what he can do for a defensive line. So it doesn't get you excited, but he'll be on an NFL roster, and he'll probably be in the league for a while.
I think, I thought he had a little bit more juice than someone like Nunez Roches. And like this dude also, man, when it comes to his hand, like this guy has almost 11-inch hands, which is absolutely, it's like 92nd percentile.
Yeah.
Low to the ground, and his arms measured in, I think, just sub 34, so 70th percentile.
Okay, so his size is fine. Yeah, I think that the trait with him was that his technique to get off pass rushers, as blockers, was just not there. So it was a very hit or miss prospect. But I do think his pass rush metrics, in terms of the amount of times he actually rushed a passer and made an impact, were higher than all these D tackles.
Yes.
He just didn't play a lot. So it's kind of like those numbers can be inflated a little bit percentage-wise. But he's probably I think we have a round 3, round 4 grade on him. So again, not round 2, but again, you can't use your second round pick on 4 different spots.
Right.
So D tackle is a spot that you lose out on because you went in a different direction. He's someone that could be that solution next to Dexter Lawrence that you can get round 3 or round 4.
Yeah, there are a lot of players, man. Like I like Alfred Collins a lot. Crazy. I think Collins, if he wasn't playing behind those 2 guys at Texas, would have had a much higher draft grade among people. I think he'll be there at 65. So my whole thing is, like, the more I hear about the depth of this class and read into it, I lean more toward maybe a different direction at 34, but I'm not sold on that, because you might just have to take the best. If Derek Harmon's in there, you just have to take Derek Harmon and things of that nature. But as we close out here, we don't have time for everything today. We're going to hit as much as we can. I need to talk offensive line with you, because in my mind's eye, I look across this offensive line and I have a lot more question marks. Now, I agree they played well before the injuries last year, but I don't love John Michael Schmitz. I never have, and I still don't. I don't love the guard situation long-term that they have. Even Runyon signed to year. Tackle long-term, I don't know what's going to happen there. Like, I personally would be looking to re-sign Jermaine Illuminor, but he made some tweets this offseason about other guys who got deals at tackle and free agency. Like, look at me, I'm going to get paid. And it's like, I don't know if I want to pay him that kind of money. So they got to think of some kind of solution. And the way I look at offensive line, you really got to get in like the top 35, because then it really thins out. So at 34 overall, I want to be specific to that pick. Who are some of the offensive linemen that would intrigue you, that you would like the Giants to take across the board?
Yeah, I like the interior guys at that spot. I don't love the tackle class. I mean, it's nothing close to what we saw last year. Last year was a kind of a historic offensive tackle class in terms of the grades, but also where they got drafted. If I remember correctly, I think there was 9 offensive linemen drafted in the first round. It was 8 or 9, which is a really high number. Most of them were tackles, or at least tackles that moved inside. I lean towards a guy like Donovan Jackson at 34 overall. Guard, played left tackle after Josh Simmons went down, and got some people thinking he might be a better tackle in the NFL, because Donovan Jackson is a much better athlete than you would think, but he's not as powerful as some people think by looking at him. He doesn't get as much movement off the ball. So that's right there with his length, 34.5-inch arms. I mean, that could be a guy that could play left tackle in the NFL. But to me, he lacks some of the bend and redirect that I would want on the outside. So I think he's kind of like a better version of what Josh Ezeudu was supposed to be. A guy that, like, hey, you got to put him at guard right away. And if you need to, your third option, you could shift him out to tackle, what Ohio State did. But he's the first name on my list. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State is a guy that I love, not for 2025, but for a guy that could, replace John Michael Schmitz in 2026, because I do think he could play center. They put him at center at the Senior Bowl, and he thrived there. I mean, he was just crushing it all week. Didn't have a great game, which does bother me a little bit. I do watch the game, and I do put some value on it because it's just different playing football in drills than it is in games. I just think a lot of these guys from North Dakota State, they need a year to adjust to the NFL power, size, speed demands. And that's what the Giants need, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to go into the draft saying we need a week 1 starter at guard. If it happens, great. But I think the right guard spot between Van Roten, Evan Neal potentially now.
Right.
I'd love to see Josh Ezeudu get a full-time look at guard. You can let those guys battle it out early in the year, and maybe this guy throws himself into the mix. Jonah Savania from Arizona played guard and tackle. Really didn't play guard since 2022. He was a left and right tackle. Giants had eyes all over him at the Senior Bowl. When he has it right, when he looks right, he looks like Mike Iupati. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Like, he looks like that, just demanding, Samoan, gonna bury you, like intimidate you all game. But he does have some balance issues, which I'm telling you what, that Evan Neal projection, it scarred me for life. When I see a guy that has balance issues, I can't watch anymore. The last name I want you to keep an eye on, in terms of 34 overall, I don't have him there. But I wouldn't, again, same thing, Jaylen Milroe. I won't be upset if he's 34, is Tate Ratledge from Georgia.
Yes.
Just crazy good athlete, crazy good personality guy. Just has a multiple lower body injuries on his resume. And I don't love guys that stand as tall as him and play as tall as him inside. That it could be a little bit of an issue, but he's such a fighter. He's such a gamer. He knows how to recover. I mean, this guy can get crushed post snap, and he knows how to recover. And that's the sign of a really good offensive lineman. Is it's not over if you initially lose. You know what to do if you initially lose. He has a lot of know-how in his game.
Ratledge is one of my favorites. I feel like they're sleeping a little bit on him in this process, or at least from
top shelf athlete, one of the best ever athletes to ever come out at guard.
Yeah. And I think, look, the injuries are concerning, but they were concerning for Landon Dickerson too. And then he hasn't been injured really at all at the NFL
That's
level.
the name that actually came to mind when I watched him. I mean, Ratledge is a better athlete, but I don't love guys that play stiff unless you are just really physically dominant with your hands. And I kind of underrated Dickerson a little bit. And I want to make sure I don't make the same mistake with Ratledge.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens on that front as far as if they're interested. One final name before we get you out of here that I'm curious about, because it's a player that I like a lot because I've just started to watch him. And you talked about with Neal, and that's been the big thing for me. Like, now when I watch offensive line, I'm all about footwork and I'm all about balance after that. And this player tested incredibly poor at the combine, and people are like, you can't take him now because of this. But I watch him, and I think his balance and anchor is the best in the class on the interior offensive line, and that just excites me so much when I watch that. And it's Tyler Booker, the offensive lineman at Alabama. Is he someone you'd consider at 34?
Yeah, I consider him there. I have Zabel and Jackson above him because of the athleticism. The guy he reminds me of is a guy I had a similar grade on. I actually think I had a higher grade on, Osiris Torrance from Buffalo. And I think I remember Nick and I talked about him, and Nick's like, hey, does it concern you that like his broad jump was really low? I'm like, it does. And it does show up on tape with Buffalo sometimes. Like, his athleticism-based losses are really tough to watch. And it scares you that it's going to keep happening. But like Torrance and like Booker is similar, you don't see a lot of those losses.
Right.
We've seen with Evan Neal, like, it's a confidence thing with him. And he loses once, it just spirals out of control. Booker, to me, it's like a short memory. Like, you want a relief pitcher or a golfer or a quarterback to have a short memory, right? Don't let it impede your confidence as you move forward. That applies to all positions. And Tyler Booker, to me, he just has a very pro look about him. And when he wins, he's dominant. He's a guy that they call it displaced defenders. Like, I'm going to move this defender against his will out of the way so that my running back can run through the lane, right? The issue I have with him that prevents him from being a first rounder, and I like the other guys, he stays on his feet. So he's not Evan Neal that he falls to the ground, but you do see a lot of tape on him where he gets really top heavy and he just folds at the waist. And I always just call it numbers facing the ground. Those kind of moves in the NFL can really crush you. But with that said, Tyler Booker probably has the widest spectrum of any top 50 prospect in this class, meaning I could see him going top 12. Literally, I could see the Colts taking him at 14.
Yeah.
And I could also see him being in the back half of second round.
Yeah.
It's just, I think some teams are really going to gamble on the physical traits that he has in combination, by the way, with some of the best intangibles that you're going to see. Alabama coaches have called him the Will Anderson of their offense, meaning just a guy that is 21 that is going on 40. And teams will like that because they're going to think that
you need that.
Yeah. And you think that it just makes the floor higher. Right. You know, like we know this guy's going to come in and work. We know this guy's not going to, criticize Giants fans for being, flipping hot dogs and hamburgers when they start booing him. Like that won't be Tyler Booker, you know? So that's someone that I definitely, if he's on the discussion at 34, Giants will give him a hard look, because if he does hit his ceiling, he's all pro caliber.
All right. He's David Syversten. You guys heard it all here. Unbelievable podcast. I could talk to you about football and the draft for probably 3 hours. If that's just like, we didn't even get into a lot of what I wanted to get into. We still covered a lot. So if you want more, you can find more. Check out the Ourlads draft guide. That's where you get it. That's where you can get information on day 3, guys. And I'm sorry, I did apologize. I did mention we might get to some questions at the end of the show, but that was too much wishful thinking. There was too much we wanted to talk about. So you can talk to Cy on Twitter and check out the draft guide. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.